All right. Welcome on in. Welcome. Yeah, let's get the show on the road, shall we? Before we jump into the astro weather of the week, I apologize I wasn't around last Monday to give you your weekly astrology forecast. I was at LA Astro Fest, which was a blast. And a big shout out to Nisa Grazda and Vivi Harriet for putting that on and for all the presenters who were there. I got to watch some great talks. And yeah, it was a really good time. Good morning, everybody. And then I went from Astrofest to Tucson with Lindsay Turner and Sam Reynolds, two fantastic astrologers, and we got to be on the Cosme podcast in Tucson. And so, yeah, we talked about Neptune and Saturn, who will be conjoining for all intents and purposes in around July. They're within 14 minutes of each other, and then they perfect the conjunction in, I believe, January of 26. But so got to go and do like an Astro tour, which was super exciting and a lot of fun. So yeah, just keep an eye out for the Cosme podcast. I'll be putting links in all of my stuff as soon as that drops. It was a fantastic conversation. A big shout out to Lisa Warman, who put that together, who runs Cosme. And yeah, so that's why I wasn't here last week. I was like deep in the astrology. And I apologize, but hey, we're here now, and we've got a more relaxed week in space now that the Pluto-Mars conjunction is separating a little bit. It's still within orb, but hopefully things are chilling out a little bit. Whoa, it just started hailing here. So if you hear a lot of drumming and thundering, it's a dark and stormy day in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So anyway, all that's out of the way. Yeah, thanks to Astrofest, thanks to Cosme, thanks to all of y'all for showing up today. And yeah, let's jump into the week in space. Oh yeah, I'm Joan Emerson Bell, your host with the most. I'm an astrologer, tarot reader. I do coaching. I'm a therapist, and yeah, I like to bring you your weekly astro weather every Monday morning at 11-ish. So thanks for tuning in, and yeah, let's talk about what's going down this week in space. So yeah, yesterday, Sunday, May the 4th, Pluto, planet of death, rebirth, transformation, lord of the underworld, stationed retrograde at 3 degrees and 49 arc minutes of Aquarius. Pluto will move back to 1 degree and 22 minutes of Aquarius when they station direct on October the 13th of this year. So quite a while. And the outer planets tend to spend, about half the year moving in retrograde motion. And so this is not like weird, it's not out of the norm, but I think it will bring up some things. Whenever a planet retrogrades, it asks us to rethink, redo, reimagine, reconsider, reconnoiter, all of those kind of re-words. And so we will be reimagining, rethinking, revisiting a lot of the Plutonian themes that have been unfolding since Pluto moved into Aquarius in November of 2024. Whoa, it just got real hectic outside. All right. Um, yeah, as I invoke Pluto, the sky opens up and large chunks of hail started falling. Anywho, so this is the first Pluto retrograde that occurs entirely in Aquarius. And so this is really bringing us into the Pluto and Aquarius era. And so, yeah, the last Pluto retrograde dipped back into Capricorn for a hot minute and then went back into Aquarius, and that was around November of 24. So with Pluto's retrogrades, we are reevaluating the changes that Pluto is making. And one of the big changes that I've seen, or like one of the sort of themes that I've noticed with Pluto entering into Aquarius is, themes of authoritarian government, the rise of fascism, the violation of human rights, the violation of people's rights as citizens, the sort of testing of democracy, and Pluto is a planet of power, and as Pluto has moved into Aquarius, there has been like a power grab in America, and the people have been trying to consolidate power. And Aquarius is a sign that deals with the collective, right? It is the sort of humanity and how we are all related and interconnected. And Pluto into Aquarius has been the consolidation of power at the top of the food chain and the kind of discarding of the rights of people. And so, as Pluto stations retrograde, I imagine that we will be revisiting some of these themes, and revisiting things like the oligarchy, right? Pluto deals with wealth because wealth is equated to power. Also, great wealth is really dangerous, right? So these are Plutonian things. And, as we are sort of moving backwards and reimagining and reconsidering, we might be rethinking like, wait, why does this person have all of this money? And I think that this has been a conversation that has been happening for a while, thinking about the consolidation of wealth inequality, class inequality. And I think that what we witnessed at the beginning of this year is a billionaire basically like hijacking the government and firing everybody and creating a huge mess. And now we're here. And as Pluto stations retrograde, we may be rethinking, wait, was that a good idea? I don't think that was a good idea, right? But I've also noticed that people in positions of power have just been like, okay, I guess so. I guess this is what we're doing, you know? And hopefully, as Pluto retrogrades and we're witnessing the fallout of these pretty dastardly decisions, people in positions of power will show up and stand up and begin speaking out about, showing up in integrity. And I think that Pluto retrograde has a lot to do with integrity because what we're doing is sort of witnessing our survival fears. We are witnessing threats to our safety and security, right? We are reconsidering our own mortality, and this calls us to stand in integrity. And hopefully, people in positions of power are able to get the memo and check in with their integrity and show up in integrity, right? So some other things that might show up with Pluto retrograde is rethinking how we access and hold power, right? As well as power struggles. And, I think this goes for the collective, right? Who holds power in the collective, right? How do I access power in the greater world, but also in ourselves? And I think all of this starts in ourselves because this is the only thing that any of us have any control over. And sometimes we don't even have control over that, you know what I'm saying? But like thinking about, okay, where do I hold power in my life? Where do I hold power in my body? How do I access power, right? How do I use and work with power? How do I meet other people who hold power, right? And like, what are those power struggles that show up when I'm in situations with other people, right? And I think that this is going to be a lot of rethinking that. Also, like reviewing secrets and things that are hidden, right? Pluto rules the underworld. And so as they retrograde, this might be going back over some of these things that were swept under the rug or tried to be hidden or tried to subvert, the daylight in some ways. And so we might be reviewing like our own secrets that we hold, right? And the power that's in them and the power that those secrets has over us. And also like, things that have just been done that have been hidden might be revealed, right? Yeah, this is also a chance to reconsider power structures in the greater world and also in our personal lives and how wealth operates in the collective. Right? Pluto in Aquarius is bringing up themes of the individual in relationship to the collective. Right. So Pluto moving over the first few degrees of Aquarius, we've seen like the rise of oligarchy, the rise of fascism, right? The rise of individuals who are holding power over the collective. And I think that with Pluto's retrograde, this is an opportunity for the individuals who make up the collective to find ways of reclaiming some of that power or finding power with each other. Because I think what Pluto and Aquarius will teach us is the power of the collective. And this has been I mean, America is very kind of individualistic, and so it's hard to come together to really access the power of the collective. But when we are in desperate times and drastic times, I think one of the things that Pluto and Aquarius will teach us is how to come into a community orientation and to find power in the collective instead of individuals trying to find power by, seeking success or money, which are sort of, I think that has been dangled as this is what power is in America, right? If you make a bunch of money and have a bunch of stuff, then you get to have power over. And I think that Pluto's transit through this fixed air sign is really reorganizing that. And we need to find how to have power with each other by creating community networks, mutual aid systems, right? Ways that we support each other and gain power through the collective connection instead of individual striving, right? Um, yeah, and I think that what we're seeing so far is individuals with immense wealth, right, claiming power over the collective and making decisions that, excuse me, privilege themselves and their billionaire friends at the expense of everyone else. Right. And they're sort of throwing the collective good and the good of the planet under the bus, right? So that they can consolidate power. And this is an incredibly Plutonian thing, right? But now that Pluto is moving backwards over the first few degrees of Aquarius, we're reviewing how things are working and how power is functioning. And again, in ourselves and in the collective and what we witness in the macrocosm. So this is also an opportunity to review our relationship with our personal shadow, right? And the shadow of the collective, right? And so the shadow is, in a Jungian sense, is everything that we can't integrate or that we repress or shove down because it doesn't fit into our idea of who we should be, who we're supposed to be, right? So as Pluto retrogrades, this is an opportunity to reconnect with these fragmented parts of ourselves and integrate them, as well as the shadow material that has emerged in the collective. So issues like wealth inequality, genocide, racism, power imbalances, class imbalance, right? The rise of fascism. All of these things are going to need to be reckoned with. We can't just be like, nah, like I don't want to look at that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to feel that. It's going to be all good, right? We can't spiritually bypass our way out of this. It's not going to work, right? Um, so we're gonna need to like sit with these things and notice like how the shadow shows up in ourselves and how we witness it in the collective, and how we can take that in to integrate some of these things, right? So that we can come into a sense of wholeness. Pluto deals with transformation and initiation. And this is a time of reviewing the transformations that we're undergoing, again, at a personal level and a collective level. As we are going through a collective kind of transformation and dealing with the collective shadow, it forces us each into our own personal transformation and how we show up and deal with these issues of gross wealth inequality, the genocide in Gaza, things like this that are not fun to look at, right? And also, I think it's important to remind ourselves, how do we sort of take these things in manageable ways? Because I think just spiraling out about fear around tariffs or empty shelves, or spiraling out about the atrocities in Gaza, doesn't help, right? Spiraling out isn't going to help us, right? That actually dissipates the power, drains the power out of our bodies, right? We become dysregulated and we can't operate from a place of wholeness. So how do we like lean into these things to be able to feel them, right, in safe ways, in ways that aren't going to take us out, right? And so there's also an opportunity to reconsider the initiations that we find ourselves being pulled into. And one way that this might show up is being like, I don't like what the government is doing, and so I'm like, I've never been political, but I'm going to show up and protest, right? Or like, I don't believe in democracy, right? Or I don't believe in a two-party system, but I'm going to write my Congress person, right? These are sort of initiations. Like, it is these challenges that call us into who we can be, into the fullness of ourselves. Right? Um, And there may not be an opportunity to go back to the way it was before, right? The caterpillar in the cocoon can't go back to its pre-cocoon self. It has to go forward and become a butterfly, even though stepping into that unknown is utterly terrifying, right? And so it's not a good idea to leave an initiation partway through, right? We kind of have to undergo the process so that we can gain access to the understanding that lives beyond the threshold of the initiation process. And so this retrograde, there's an ability to reconsider what this process looks like and how we can better resource ourselves in order to complete this transformation. Right? This is sort of like maybe deciding what we want to carry with us so that we can travel more swiftly through the underworld realms. Also, sometimes we don't get to choose what the initiation looks like, but we can think about what we want it to look like on the other side. Who is the person that I want to come out looking like, acting like, feeling like, being like? How do I want to show up in the world? And I think that this initiation really calls us to tune into our core self and to live in integrity. But in the underworld, there's no going back, right? Once you go in, this is like one of the rules of the underworld. Don't eat anything, and there's no going back. Right. So we have to keep moving forward because forward is the only way through. But there are opportunities to reconsider the paths that we might take, right? And the connections that we make in ourselves and in the world. With the Pluto retrograde, we are really asked to like rethink our survival fears and needs, right? Pluto has a lot to do with survival strategies. And to really face the parts of ourselves that are operating on an unconscious survival level, right? The place that gets activated when we like open the news and see like Trump is doing this or this thing's happening, right? And we get activated, we go into like a shutdown or a fight or flight, right? To really sit with those parts of ourselves and those survival fears that are becoming activated, right? And so that we can learn to integrate them so that they don't just hijack us, right? So Pluto presents us with fears and challenges that push us towards transformation in the process of death and renewal. And transformation's never easy, right? Rebirth requires a death process, right? Renewal requires a death. And that death process is not comfortable, it's not easy, it's not fun, but I mean, this is what Pluto offers us. This is what Pluto brings, and the best thing that we can do is show up in the best way that we can and resource ourselves in skillful ways. And I think Pluto, through Aquarius, the resources in the collective and in the community, right? And so this is an opportunity to turn towards those around us and to form community connections to help resource us as we're going through this collective renewal process. Right. And during this process, and I'm talking about all of Pluto in Aquarius, which they're going to be there for like 20 years, right? So buckle up. And this is, as it moves forward and breaks new ground and then retrogrades, right? That sort of back and forth is like an in breath and an out breath, you know. And there are places of ease and places of being like, yo, what just happened? Right. Okay, we're here now. What can I do to support myself so I can live in better alignment with my true self? Right. And during this time, we are forced to face our shadows and our own inner depth in order to find integrity and connect with that core self. And this is what helps us to navigate the rivers of the underworld, the sense of integrity and alignment, right? In these spaces of disintegration and forgetting. And so, yeah, happy Pluto retrograde, everybody. And we just get to observe what this is like until October and find ways of resourcing ourselves. And again, I think a lot of the resource is going to come through community and the connections that we make with each other on horizontal levels. So I see Aquarius as being very horizontal, right? Where Pluto and Capricorn was hierarchical structures, right? Power at the top. I think Pluto in Aquarius is horizontal power, right? And how we can hold power with. Yes, until October. I believe October the 13th, Pluto is going to be retrograde. Sorry, Pluto is going to station direct I believe on October the 13th. Just go back. Yeah. And they will station retrograde at 1 degree and 22 minutes. And yeah, Pluto is retrograde now at 3 degrees. So between now and October, Pluto moves like 2 degrees. And that's how Pluto rolls. Okay, so bringing it to today, Monday, May the 5th, we have Mercury, the messenger in Aries, sextile Jupiter in Gemini. This is going down at 22 degrees and 19 arc minutes. And so, yeah, Jupiter is in Mercury's sign of Gemini, right? So Mercury is the dispositor. Um, Somebody was saying, there goes my hopes for a chill summer. I mean, Pluto is always doing something, right? Pluto is always doing something under the surface. And I don't think that this is going to blow up our summer plans, right? This isn't gonna like change our lives in drastic ways. Again, Pluto's always like out there churning things up in the underworld of our psyches, right? In the underworld of our physical world. And, we learn to live with this, right? I think the like real chaos in the summer is going to come in July when Neptune and Saturn come within 14 minutes of each other. But like we one of the things that I love about astrology is that it's not about being like, oh, like the weather is difficult, so I'm like not gonna do anything. Like for example, right, the physical weather, right, right now it's hailing and I'm not going out of my house, but I know that that will stop, and so it's better for me to like run my errands once it stops. But if it's gonna rain for like 6 weeks, I can't not leave my house, right? So we just find ways of resourcing ourselves in the weather that's happening and showing up for what is asked of us, right? It's not about not doing things. It's about doing things in skillful ways where we're able to show up and pay attention to what's arising in the collective and in ourselves so that we can respond to it in skillful ways, in ways that support us and our long-term goals, right? As well as the goals of the people in our community and our ideals for the future. And so I would not like cancel your summer plans just yet, right? I would, go about your life in the ways that you want and keep tuning into this show so you know what to expect. But, this is just an opportunity to kind of reconnect with our depth. Right? Reconnect with the things that are kind of been bubbling under the surface. And those things, once we connect with them and integrate them, they offer a ton of power. And I think that this is the gift of Pluto, right? As we find ourselves being fragmented and shoving away the things that are difficult or uncomfortable or we don't know what to deal with, that drains our power away. And yeah, some good comments in the chat there. So moving right along, Monday, May the 5th, we have Mercury in Aries, sextile Jupiter in Gemini. And again, Mercury ruling Gemini. So Jupiter in Gemini sign, Mercury is the dispositor, and they are coming into a supportive aspect, which I love, right? So this transit can help us with a sense of coherence, right? And help us to create new narratives that can support the people that we are becoming, right? Mercury is about information, connection, right? Jupiter is about meaning making, right? And culture building. So Mercury is making connections with the information it's picking up from the inner and outer world. Jupiter brings these connections into a big picture narrative that helps us to orient to the world around us and the ways that we show up in it, right? So this is an opportunity to create a new story. So what is the story that you want to be telling moving forward, right? And how do you tell a story of empowerment? Right? How do you create a coherent narrative for yourself that helps you to navigate the chaos of the external world? And I think that this is like the gift of what we get today, is the kind of relationship between, oh, this is everything that I'm taking in, and oh, this is the way that I'm synthesizing. This is how I'm making sense of it. And this is not, to abandon logic, right? This is about thinking about a preferred narrative. What is a better story that I can tell, right? So to also consider like what are the old stories that we've been telling, right? Stories of victimhood or disempowerment or nothing works or I'm not good enough, right? What are these stories that we can release to make way for something new that can help us to feel in better alignment with who we are and our core self and how we really want to show up in our lives? Show up for ourselves and show up for each other and show up for the world around us, right? So this is a great opportunity for meaning making. And it's important to consider the meanings that we are synthesizing from the data that we are receiving. And I think a lot of the data that's coming in is like doom and gloom and it's all bad, right? We're spiraling out, you know? So how do we take that and transform it into something that sounds empowering, that feels empowering, that gives us agency in our lives, right? I think it's also along with the like it's easy to tell a story of doom and gloom, right? It's also easy to spiritually bypass what's happening in the world and in our lives and only look towards all the good stuff, right? Or to just check out, right? And be like, "Oh, I don't want to look at that." Right? I just want to like, watch my stories, right? And I think that there can be a pull to ignore some of the harder realities that we are facing, right? And I think the real juice is being able to be with what is and begin to author a story that incorporates some of the Jupiterian aspects of hope and faith without abandoning or ignoring the realities of the situation that we find ourselves in, right? So Jupiter, again, is in Mercury sign of Gemini, and this is a place where Jupiter has a difficult time because they are under-resourced. They are in detriment there, right? And they need to find creative ways of getting their needs met. So with this supportive aspect from Mercury to Jupiter, right, the ruler of Gemini, Jupiter has this opportunity to get a little clarity in the immense data that is Gemini, right? The immense data set that is the sign of Gemini, right? Gemini is just like this and that and that and that and that, right? And Jupiter gets a little overwhelmed, right? And I think one of the ways that Jupiter gets overwhelmed is it creates splitting and fragmentation. I think that we have seen this a lot through Jupiter's tenure in Gemini, right? And so I think this is an opportunity to hold some of the tension of the opposites so that a secret third thing can arise. I love a secret third thing, right? And so this is the benefit of the Mercury Jupiter sextile. Jupiter is big enough to hold the back and forth of the Gemini archetype, right? But it can't always make sense of it. And so, Jupiter finds itself like being pulled this way and pulled that way and pulled this way and pulled that way. And this is what creates that splitting and fragmentation. So with this sextile, Jupiter has a chance to really sit with and learn the wisdom of duality, which is the kind of, the wisdom of Gemini, right? And being able to hold multiple things at once, right? Instead of being like this and that and that and that, we can like sit there and be like, what does it feel like to hold both truths, right? To hold multiple truths, right? And sometimes it requires us to move back and forth, right? And to see if we can like move back and forth so quickly that like both of these truths can be with us, right? Can integrate. And I think it's interesting to consider what happens. What does it feel like when we hold multiple things at once? What happens when we sit in the tension? What do we notice in our bodies? Right? What happens when we transcend these sort of binaries of right and wrong, good and bad, left and right, male and female? Right? What happens when we allow ourselves to be with the myriad possibilities of the space between the polar opposites of the binary system? Allow ourselves to be in the 50 shades of gray, if you will, right? And allow the nuance and opportunities for new understanding, as well as the kind of mental and emotional connections that are formed when we can sit in that sort of in between space. This allows us to consider new ways of creating coherence and understanding, right? And human beings hate being in the unknown, right? We're not good at this. The mind hates ambivalence. We see something and we're like, cool, that's this, that's that. That's how I can make sense of this. Right. So we make up stories and we jump to conclusions that help us to make sense of the world so that we can feel safe. With Jupiter in Gemini, it's learning to be with what is without needing to know in order to feel that sense of control or that sense of safety, right? Can we just like lean back a little and allow ourselves to feel into what it could be, right? What it might be, what it might turn out to be, how it could unfold, right? When we can sit in the space of the unknown, it opens potential for something new to emerge, a new truth, a new viewpoint, a new narrative that can really help us to orient to the world and work in a more skillful way. Right. So there's something to consider today. Great opportunity to like sit in the unknown, right? And to notice like what is it like to hold two things, right? What does it feel like in my body, right? Can I be with that feeling? What images or senses or sensations arise when I like sit in the unknown, you know? And you don't have to do that all day, but like allowing ourselves a little bit more space to be with that unknown before we jump to conclusions and be like, it's a lamp, it's a shoe, right? It's this, it's that. I know this one, you know. It's allowing ourselves to kind of be in that in-between space. And I think that something really beautiful can emerge from that. Okay. Tuesday, May the 6th. Venus in Aries sextiles Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. It's going down at 3 degrees, 49 arc minutes. That's the degree that Pluto is stationed at. Pluto is going to be stationary for a minute because they're real slow moving, right? So this is the third sextile that Venus is making to Pluto. The first one was back on February the 7th, and the second one was March 21st when Venus was retrograde. And so it's interesting to note that each of these sextiles occurred within a week of Venus's conjunction with Neptune. Right, this one's moving out a little bit, but the first two occurred, right around the time Venus was sextile with Neptune. And so there's, as this evolving story, right, of Venus contacting these outer planets, right, there's something about, right, the Venus conjunction with Neptune, are where our fantasies or dreams about love or relationship that may have revealed some of the shadow material, Pluto, right? Or the dissolving of relationships that pulls us into an underworld space. Again, Neptune into Pluto, right? And these sort of relational issues or breaks, right, or connections may have opened up a space for transformation, right? And so Venus in relationship with Pluto, Venus sextile Pluto, can open up a longing for connection. Right. And so in this digital age, so much of our connection is through the virtual space, right? This connection that we're having, right, is a Neptunian illusion, right, coming through the mediation of our devices. Right. But there's this energetic quality about being in connection in a physical space, right? Which creates co-regulation. Right? And so when Venus met Neptune, it may have created the illusion of connection, right? Or the fantasy of feeling mirrored or regulated with another person through the kind of Neptunian nebulous digital space. But when Venus came into relationship with Pluto, it might have activated a desire for depth, like actual depth, that revealed some of the illusion of the Neptunian ideal, right? So with Venus sextile Pluto, it can activate a desire for emotional depth, or it may intensify our emotions in our existing relationships. Again, Pluto can bring up a bunch of shadow material. And with Venus, this is the shadow of love and connection. May reveal attachment issues and attachment style things, or unmet needs in relationship, or unmet desires. There's also this point, this also points to the places in ourselves where we crave depth, where we feel unloved or unworthy and are looking for validation or attention or mirroring through our relationships in order to try and meet those needs. And right, there's nothing wrong with this. We are social beings. However, this is an opportunity to really witness ourselves and to recognize where we are looking for others to soothe that part of ourselves that feels unloved or uncared for, or where we are looking at current relationships to try and fix our old relational wounds. And so under this transit, the feelings that become activated can be these sort of trailheads, right, that lead us into the depth of our emotions and our longings, right? These feelings are kind of openings into that underworld, right? And they can reveal deeper truths about our values and our needs and our desires in love, as well as relationship. Again, Pluto is this planet of power. So we may be confronted with the power of love, right? And the power of desire, the power that love, feels in us, where we're like, oh my God, that person, right? Or they're like, oh my God, why are they not texting me back, right? That is the power of love right there. Venus Pluto can also manifest as obsession, right? That, why are they texting me back? You know, uh, those feelings of feeling unseen, and if we think about Pluto as an underworld deity, right, the people who live in the underworld are shades, they're ghosts, right, they are unseen. And so if we find ourselves pulled into that underworld, it can be a sense of like, I'm not being seen, I'm not being witnessed, I'm not being met, right? I just feel like a ghost, right? And ghosts, I think, also have this sense of craving, right? So when this kind of like Pluto-Venus relationship gets activated, it can activate this I'm not seen and like I can't get my needs met, right? And again, this is a supportive aspect, right? So this is an opportunity to kind of witness and unravel some of these feelings and maybe ask for our needs to be met or find skillful ways of meeting those needs for connection, right? So we want to like really witness those places where we may find ourselves obsessed with another person or a past relationship or a beauty standard or a beauty ideal, right? Why can't I look like that person? Oh, they're so beautiful. I really want to look like them, right? And so one of the key pieces of Venus is values, right? And this transit can help us to recognize our value system in the places that we are living in alignment with our values or the places we are not, right? And so Pluto may reveal some where we have abandoned ourselves or our value system in order to find connection. Or it might help us to reorient to our values, right? And to be in better alignment with our values. Our values are really important touchstones that allow us to stay in alignment, right? As we are faced with this shadow material around feelings of love, acceptance, self-worth, right? And there are myriad opportunities to abandon ourselves and abandon our value system in order to meet our perceived survival needs for connection, right? For security, for stability. And I think with this sextile, it's like, hey, do you want to do this? And we get to be like, is this in alignment with my value system, right? Is this in alignment with my integrity, you know? And I think this is a real opportunity to orient to that sense of integrity and alignment and value system, right? And on a macro scale, as we were faced with the collective Pluto manifesting as the rise of fascism and authoritarian governments, it calls us to really connect in with those values in order to show up in alignment with the core principles of ourselves. Collectively, I think we're witnessing people in power abandoning their values, right? The values of the Constitution, right? Or cowering under authoritarian threats, right? And just allowing injustice to occur, right? And I think it's really easy to talk about like concepts of democracy and equality and justice, but when push comes to shove, those who are not able to live in accordance with these values fold under the weight of the external pressure of survival fears. And so with Pluto is gestation retrograde, right? We'll be rethinking of a lot of the desires and actions for the first half of the year, right? And with Pluto coming into this supportive aspect with Venus, it will be a call to remember our core values and hopefully to begin to live in accordance with them. And I think that we can do this on, again, an individual basis. And I hope that those in positions of power are able to come into alignment with their integrity and core values to uphold, things like the Constitution, right? Human rights, human decency, human connection. Lastly, Pluto is this archetype of initiation and transformation. We talked about this at the top of the hour. Right? When they are in contact with Venus, that initiation comes through relationship. right? And in mythology, we have all of these sort of examples of this. Hades' abduction of Persephone, Inanna going down to meet Ereshkigal, Cupid and Psyche, right? All of these figures are transformed through relationship, and they are initiated through a descent into the underworld, which is kind of brought on by love and relationship or obsession. Right? And through these processes, they can gain access to personal power and learn to connect with themselves on a deeper level. Right? So Pluto Venus asks us to consider our relationship with death and our own mortality as well, right? Can we love our own death? I know, big question for a Monday morning, right? And can we come to love the things that we fear? In the story of Persephone, right, Demeter tries to keep her safe and prevent her from growing up or growing old or experiencing any hardship or harm in her life. And this is what causes the abduction, right? Hades emerging and abducting Persephone, right? The ignorance to the pain of life invites the suffering that initiates us into life and transforms us. And through this initiation, Persephone goes from just being a naive maiden to being the queen of the underworld and having immense amounts of power, right? The power over life and death, right? And so, this relationship, this initiation ultimately gives us access to power through accepting the hard truths about our existence. And so Pluto and Venus invites us on a journey into the underworld in order to truly understand ourselves. All right. Tuesday, May the 6th, we have Mercury in Aries conjunct Chiron in Aries. This is going down at 24 degrees and 25 arc minutes of the cardinal fire sign of Aries. So this is an opportunity to gain some clarity about our wounds, right? And also to recognize the places where healing and help is available. Chiron is an archetype of the wounded healer as well as the teacher. Mercury again is making connections, is taking in information and sharing information, right? And I think Mercury provides a lot of clarity sometimes, right? When they want to. They're also kind of a trickster archetype, right? And so they reveal truth in like interesting ways, right? Kind of roundabout ways. But with this conjunction, it gives us a chance again to recognize, right, the place where there is a wound, and also to sort of realize that that healing is available, right? That the antidote grows next to the poison. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, and will come in and be like, "Hey, yo, it's right here." Right? Oh, you've just been sitting with the thing that can heal you the entire time, and you just didn't have awareness of that, right? And sometimes the wound and the medicine are the same thing, right? Chiron really holds the story about unmet needs and about the places where it's been wounded or abandoned or unseen, right? The ways that things haven't worked out. Mercury provides connections and the ability to process information, right? But Mercury, in an alchemical sense, is also a solvent. It dissolves things, right? And so it can dissolve the scars and the scabs that Chiron has built up around the wound to protect itself, right? And so Mercury can sort of like dissolve and soften some of these things so that something new can emerge, right? So that the wound can get cleaned out. Mercury is also unifying, right, in alchemical sense. So it can help us to pull together the parts that have been fragmented through the wounds and our traumas or our disconnections, right, or our heartbreaks. Right? So Mercury can kind of call back some of these parts that have been separated out through the suffering that we've experienced. Chiron is a centaur, half horse, half human, right? So Mercury's helping to unify the animal and the human parts of the self, right? We have the kind of top-down cognitive function of the kind of human intellect, right? The prefrontal cortex, and the bottom up, the animal body, the instinctual body, the reptilian and mammalian brain, right? The automatic responses and the kind of emotional brain, Right? And Mercury as unifying force, alchemical unifying force helps bring these all together so that they can operate in tandem, right? And we don't get hijacked, right? Mercury can like help us slow down these processes, right? So that we can bring the prefrontal cortex human brain online when the animal body gets activated, right? And also it can help us to remember the animal body, right? These beautiful vehicles that we get to exist in, right? And the wisdom that they hold, the information that they can share with us instead of the sort of postmodern logic that, like, I'm just a head, right? A floating head, right? Mercury, again, helping to unify and gather information and process information that we're taking in through all of our senses, right? Mercury can help us to hold both of these things so we can find a place of integration. And I think this is how healing actually occurs. Right? Mercury is also the change agent who helps us to transform this wound, right? This place that is calling out for regulation or support or connection, right? Helps us to move, like Mercury coming off of their relationship with Jupiter, helps us to move out of old stories of victim narratives so that we can move beyond the limitations of what hurt us and the need to sort of replay that. Right. And instead use these experiences of pain to kind of move into a space of post-traumatic growth, right? To help support our continued growth, to recognize, oh shit, that was really difficult, but I came through that, right? And this is what I learned from it, right? Mercury is also, again, the messenger. So it helps us to communicate, hey, I went through this very challenging period and it sucked a lot, but this is how I got through that, right? And I see you're going through something similar, and this is what really worked for me. Right? Mercury allows us to increase our ability and gain awareness of the wounds that we carry, right? As well as like helping us to tune into what worked, right? What helped us to move through that and how we can communicate that with others, right? And this is where Chiron turns into the teacher, right? Instead of just being suffering, right? Chiron becomes proactive and is like, you know what? I'm gonna do something about this. I'm gonna heal this, right? And becomes starts working with medicinal plants, right? Starts working with healing modalities, starts helping himself out. And through that, he is able to help other people out. He is able to communicate the wisdom that he had learned through his own healing journey to support other people, and he becomes the teacher of heroes, right? So as we gain cognitive awareness of this Chiron wound, we also might find it easier to communicate to others our personal healing journey, right? And also, just what it's like to be a human, living in a human body, right? We can communicate what we have learned from our experience of the Chiron wound and how working with it has helped us to know ourselves better, you know? So this brings us to the last transit of the week. Saturday, May the 10th, Mercury enters Taurus. So Mercury will be in the fixed Earth sign of Taurus until May the 25th when they enter their home sign of Gemini. All right, so again, Taurus is a fixed Earth sign ruled by Venus. Mercury is quick and mercurial and changeable. In Taurus, the more volatile natures of Mercury become fixed, right? And this helps us to communicate in more practical and grounded ways. Taurus is interested in the things that create pleasure and comfort and safety, right? Taurus is looking to hold on to what it values and what feels good. So Mercury here can help us to consider and communicate what feels good for us and what brings us a sense of safety and pleasure. Mercury is interested in making connections, so we may notice that we are able to connect our experience with how it makes us feel. Does this bring me pleasure? Does this make me feel safe? How do I value this thing? And how do I value this thing? Right? In Taurus, safety is not enough, right? Capricorn is interested in safety and achievement, and it will forgo the sort of frills of like, does this make me feel good, right? Capricorn's just like, I got to get up that mountain, right? I got to create a sense of safety. I've got to create a structure. Taurus is not having that, right? Taurus is interested in the nice things that help us to relax and regulate our nervous system so that we can come into connection, right? And I think about this a lot, right? If we go into a space with like fluorescent lighting and like it's dirty and it smells bad, how does that make your nervous system feel? right? Bad lighting, like, it's dingy, it's kind of gross, we sort of puts us on edge, right? If there's like a car alarm going off in the background, right? Like, it kind of activates the nervous system and gets us ready for like what's going to happen. Am I going to be okay here? This kind of sucks. I don't like this. When we go into a space with good music, right? Nice textures, good smells, right? Good lighting, which is key, it helps our nervous system relax, right? And we go from, yeah, thank you. Yeah, run for the hills for real, right? But when we go into like, nice lighting and like incense and like cool patterns and good textures, right? It allows us, it allows our nervous system to sort of relax a little bit, and it opens us up to have connection, right? I'm not trying to have like a long conversation under fluorescent lights. I'll be like, cool, I'll see you later, right? But if there's like good tea and something nice to eat and like good music playing, I'll hang out there all day, right? And so, this is what Taurus is trying to create is like nice, good feeling environment so that we can relax and feel that sense of safety because like it feels good and come into connection with each other because that's what Venus is all about. Right. And so Mercury can help us to kind of realize and recognize that felt sense of joy and pleasure and safety as we move through the world and interact with each other. Again, Mercury is making connections. Oh, does this feel good? Does this not feel good? What is this like? Is this like this thing that I've noticed before? Oh, I was in this space, and the last time I was in this space, I had a really good time. Right. So that gives me information about like what it's like to be in the space again. Oh, when I was in that space, I had a really bad time. That gives me information about like what this space feels like in a very felt sense, on a somatic sense, right? So Mercury in Taurus is able to kind of identify the things that we enjoy and the ways that those things make us feel. Right. So this is an opportunity for somatic awareness, right? Somatic intelligence, the information that our body is telling us about the environments that we're in, as well as an opportunity for emotional intelligence. How am I feeling right now? Right? What is my body telling me? What are my feelings telling me? What does it actually feel like to be in this body? Um, what information am I picking up through my senses and just being able to recognize that? And, we think about Mercury as being connected to the mind, right? Or to the Olympian superconsciousness. But Mercury is the messenger who moves between all of the worlds. And they carry the information and the messages from the superconscious to the conscious to the underworld or the unconscious of the body. Right? And they transmit information to the body, from the body to the mind through the nervous system. Right? And as we connect with pleasure and play, it helps our nervous system to relax. This is the gift of Mercury and Taurus. It helps us to recognize the felt sense of safety through like textures, taste, beautiful sights, pleasing sounds, right? These are the things that Taurus really desires. And so here we can learn to regulate our nervous system through the experience of pleasure, right? And the sensations of loving connections. There's a real opportunity to get in touch with the wisdom of the body and the information that is trying to communicate through our emotional and physical sensations, right? And so, with that, my friends, just to recap, this is an opportunity to, overall week recap, opportunity to really notice the shadow material that comes up, right? To think about like where we hold power in our lives and how we might be able to access more power and hold power with instead of power over, right? There's an opportunity to notice the power of love and relationship, right? In the places where our relationships may be inviting us into deeper depth, right? Deeper emotional depth. It's an opportunity to notice the sort of wounds that get activated and how we can communicate them and the information that we receive around these kind of core wounds, right? Because I think that there's an opportunity to engage in some deeper healing work this week. And also an opportunity to like just feel good, right? To notice the sensations of the body, notice what feels good, what we are drawn towards, what our bodies are telling us, right? What our feelings are telling us. and to create a sense of safety and pleasure through, our experience in the world to help us to have a greater connection with each other. And I think as we notice what feels good, it helps to support us as we were doing some of the deeper Pluto and Chiron work this week. Um, and so, yeah, there you go. That is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Let me take a look at this comment. Um, Astrology by Moonlight says, I've really been working on just listening to how I'm feeling without having to identify the why or label things as good or bad, rather for me or not me. That's beautiful. That's beautiful, you know. Because I think when we go to like good or bad, right, that tells a story about how things are supposed to be, right? Or instead of allowing them to be just how they are, right? Does this feel right for me right now? Okay, it doesn't. So what can I do to sort of shift that? Or can I be with that? Can I tolerate that? Oh, this does feel good for me, right? Can I be with this a little bit more without like, clinging to it? And what does this feel like in my system when it's for me, right? What does it feel like in my system when it's not for me? Brilliant. Anyway, thank you all for showing up on this Monday morning as the hail is accumulating here. It was a little dicey for a moment, but we made it through. I really appreciate you all. Thanks for tuning in. Anything that, I don't know, I do a radio show sometimes weekly called the Melee Report. Again, I took a break from that while I was doing my Astrofest adventure. But I should be getting back to that shortly. I'm trying to like do less stuff. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I do a radio show called the Melee Report. You can find that on SoundCloud. I don't know if I have anything coming up, but I will be whenever Cosme releases the episode that I recorded with Lisa Warman, Sam Reynolds, and Lindsay Turner. I'll be posting that everywhere possible. That was a great conversation about Neptune conjunct Saturn, and Saturn and Neptune's ingress into Aries. So that's super exciting. Had a great time. And again, big shout out to all the folks, presenters, and people who came to Astrofest. That was a blast. I really hope they do it again. Had a great time. At some point, I think I'm going to get access to my recording, which is about internal family systems and parts work and astrology. And so that'll be available for purchase on my website. And also, me and my partner Marlena Seven Bremner just taught this 8-part class called the seven classical planets through myth, magic, and alchemy, and that is now available for purchase on Seven's website, marlena7bremner.com. I can put links to that in the show notes. So if you want to learn more about astrology, about the planetary archetypes, about the planets and alchemy, check that out. I think it went really well. So yeah, that'll be available for purchase. And yeah, thank you, Gina Maria. Yeah, Gina Maria was in it, and they're saying fascinating class, which it was. Had a blast teaching that. And so yeah, you if you want, you can purchase that on the website, and yeah, be able to watch it at your leisure. So that's all, my friends. I hope you all have a wonderful Monday and an excellent week in space. And I will see you next time. Same Wizard channel, same Wizard time, same Wizard channel. And until then, be well, my friends. And as always, may the Force be with you. Bye now.